agenda. We've had a request to move the discussion of the I-90 down on discussion items 13 up ahead of the variance. Does that make sense?
So the overlay discussion will be item 9 and everything will shift down. You'd remain as planning and zoning
Right.
for that discussion.
Yep. Okay. So if you're in agreement, someone can make a motion to that effect.
Ms. Brooks would make a motion to approve the agenda with that change.
Is there a second?
Toad second.
All in favor? Opposed? All right. So we've got our agenda consent calendar. Patrick?
Any questions on the consent calendar?
Got anything to add or okay? Well, you know the rule, you know the routine, guys. Ladies?
Heidbrink will make a motion to approve the consent.
Shoneman second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, the minutes. I always look to Alyssa for the minutes. Did they look good?
Yeah, I see one thing that's probably a typo, but
Okay.
let's fix it. It's in the first paragraph.
Could we get your microphone so it picks up?
One change I would request for the minutes of the last meeting happens in the first paragraph that starts out, a public hearing was held. Second line over to the right, it says so-and-so was present presenting the applicant. I'm guessing it should be representing the applicant. So just add 2 letters there. It's probably a typo, but I thought I'd mention it. Other than that, I move to approve.
Heidbrink second.
Go, we've got a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the February 20th meeting. All in favor? Opposed? All right. This is a time for public comments. If you're here to discuss something on the agenda or something totally off of the agenda, we ask you to come forward, state your name and address. It's limited to 5 minutes. Is anyone here for public comment? Okay. Moving on to the conditional use application, that's on page 10.
So this is an application for the Hideaway Bar and Casino. It is in a location right behind Pizza Ranch. They are requesting to add video lottery machines to the building. They're requesting 6. And what you have in front of you on the larger piece of paper is kind of the site plan where they will be located on the premises. I think the applicant is here.
Would you like to come forward and just give us the information, what you're thinking?
I'm Chad Hazard.
Just push the button. There you
It's been
go.
a while.
Okay.
I'm Chad Hazard, one of the owners of the Hideaway. Used to be the upper room. It's just a small establishment that's connected to the Pizza Ranch. Me and a couple of other investors invested into that about a month ago or so, and just doing some remodeling. Otherwise, it was going to close, I think, January 30th or something like that. So to keep it open, we acquired that and the assets. And anyway, what we're looking at doing, again, from a revenue standpoint, we're limited on space there, is to add roughly 6 video lottery machines into the facility.
Chad, can you give us your address, please?
I believe, I don't even have it memorized.
No, your address.
205 South Sunset Drive.
And so, Patrick, we need a conditional use because.
Video lottery is a conditional use in the general business
Okay.
district. So, should you approve staff's recommendation on conditions is that you specify the number, just because if you don't, they would be allowed up to 10. If you want to limit it to 6, specify a number. That they provide all state approval documents to the city, as well as should they provide any updated plans, a site plan, or otherwise to the state that the similar is provided to us. So that is staff's recommendation, should you approve and add conditions.
So the application is asking for 6?
Yes, 6 right now, and we are in discussions with the owners, occupants of the facility on taking on more space, which would be a second room. And if I'd call that phase 2, we'd like to get started with the phase 1 that we proposed to you. If we proceed with that, then we would put them in an individual room with the possibility of then looking at adding the full 10 per the license and everything. But right now, based on the space, we were looking at a max of 6.
Just to clarify, that's not residential to the east, is it? I just know on a previous casino application, it was against residential, and we had some concerns about the smoking area and the noise and.
There's this sliver in between.
I can't remember offhand what's right behind there.
It's open. There's the Pizza Ranch has like a shed back there, but it's just open land, I guess.
Building that a long time ago was a car wash?
It was a car, yeah, and the foundation's there yet.
Yeah, and
Yep.
is there a building there anymore?
Nope, the foundation's there
Yeah.
yet. Yeah, when I first moved here, it was a car wash. And actually where the little bar was at, that was a small engine shop.
Yeah,
What's that, 1401 there?
It does appear to be a house.
It looks like it's about 100, from the property line of the Pizza Ranch, looks like about 122 feet to the property line of that residential, somewhere in there. So I mean, there's pretty good space there.
oh, but that first house, is that the house that was a lawyer's office? Yeah. Yeah, so it's, nobody lives there.
It's home occupation. She lives there.
Do we have anybody in the audience, in regards to this conditional use? Thanks for reminding me. Okay. Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use as submitted.
and are you putting the limitation on it?
As submitted to the 6.
Toad second.
And then Patrick, what was the other part you had mentioned, something about getting documents?
Yep. So Mr. Reed would request that if you'd be willing that whatever you submit and gets approved by the state, you give us a copy of that as well. And should the state not find your site plan or whatever to be what they want, that you would just update your documents you submitted to us.
Correct, yep, no problem with that.
One other quick question.
Yep.
Do you have a designated smoking area outside of that?
There's a patio there, yeah, that's railed off.
Is it like right up next to the
It's
building?
right up next to it, yep.
And so Brian, would you be and Mike agreeable to those conditions that Patrick just stated in your motion? With the documents,
I think that's required by law, so, yeah.
but for us to get a copy of them? Okay. Okay. All right, so we've got a motion and a second on the table. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Well, we appreciate that you stepping in and keeping that business open. It's
Thank
always
you.
nice to have more businesses in town, and I was just in there the other night, so.
Were
It's
you?
kind of a fun,
Perfect, thank
it's
you.
kind of a fun little place.
Yeah, we're kind of going to make it into more of a quiet speakeasy type of place. So anyway, the theme and everything in there will change a bit, but we're not after, not picking on any other businesses, but we're not after like a D&D type of crowd or any of that, but just kind of a low key place. And if you've been in there, hopefully you kind of got that vibe.
Yeah, it was
so.
kind of like, just kind of like a neighborhood
Yeah,
kind of thing.
100%,
Yeah,
yeah,
so,
so.
yeah. So appreciate your investing in Brandon.
So for my understanding, just so we're clear, I'll copy Brian on the blueprints and everything that I've been working with Mason on from the state. So, and we'll go through that process, but if we take on that next portion and consider adding the full 10, do we come back and reapply for that, or how does that work? Just so
Yes,
I'm
you would
clear
have
with-
to submit a new application.
Okay, that's fair. I just want to make sure we're doing everything per expectations, so. All right, thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a home occupational permit for 1509 South Split Rock. Do we have someone here that wants to talk? Come on up.
So the applicants are requesting to operate a food truck on their residential property located on the southern part of town.
If you can just give us your name and address, please.
Hello, excuse me. Hello, I'm Barry Bakken, live at 1509 South Split Rock Road.
Okay.
Brandon. We've operated our food truck in Brandon for, this will be our third year. We've had a food truck. We don't have our food peddler's permit yet this year. We just haven't applied for it yet, but we will get it soon. But we're just asking that we could set up in our driveway sometimes and operate the food truck out of there. Brandon allows food trucks, but it's really limited on where they let it be. You can't be in a park, you can't be on a street. I've asked about so many places along 11, and they're like, well, a lot of them like, oh, I don't want to interfere with my neighbor's business or whatever, you know what I mean? So we do it at Stirred Events a few times a year. They allow us to come over there on a Friday. They have a Friday food truck or whatever. And we go to Marmon. I work at Marmon Energy, and we go out there on evenings and I get a permission from the city to go operate after 9. Because after they go to break the night shift goes to break at like 10, and it's just sometimes it's hit or miss if a place is going to be open to serve food at 9 or 10 at night as far as fast food. So, and then we go to Midwest Railcar. The last couple of years we've been there every Wednesday. We serve them guys, and a lot of the Corson places we have served food too.
So where are you at on Split Rock? Give me an idea.
That new house they moved in last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is there anyone here in the audience that wants to address this issue? Dave? You can just give us your name and address.
Dave Swear, 413 Meadowlark Circle. I work for Southeastern Development Foundation, who put the house in, sold it to these great people. They're really nice people. We don't have any concerns. Southeastern Development doesn't. We own the house to the south of there yet, and we wanted to make sure that the neighbor's in the process of maybe buying that property. We just don't want to have any issues with, if there's a lot of cars there, that all of a sudden he's got a traffic issue or a parking issue in his, and we own the lot to the south of that house too yet. So, but these people are great people, but we just want to make sure that if there is a problem, you guys can take care of it, so.
Would you anticipate a traffic issue?
No. We don't never have a line of people. I mean, yeah, of course, if we go to Marmon on our lunch break, we're packed, but other places, no. You might have 1 or 2 cars at a time,
So would this include, consumption on the property or just sales?
you know, we might set up a picnic table or something where they could eat at there, but most of it, people just come grab it and go, you know.
So would they park off, they'd park on?
Park off of the highway.
Off of the highway, okay.
And we could put a sign out there, please, please do not park along highway.
As my biggest concern would be, that's kind of an issue we went through with staging for drive-ins or drive-through places that you need to have so much space for staging vehicles, and that's kind of a bad spot if they do start to back up onto the highway.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you would limit that. Excuse me, limit that while people are pulling up. Do you have any?
Now, there's quite a few spots there, and we don't. Our main thing is hot dogs. We serve 50. They're quarter pound all beef hot dogs, and we can serve them really fast. It's not like you got to stand in line and wait for food. You come up and we can serve you and get you out. I don't ever see that it would be like a lot of people waiting. You know, it's not going to be something they're going to be waiting for. We do gourmet hot dogs. We do, you know, that kind of stuff. And sometimes we'll do like pulled pork sandwiches, but the pulled pork is prepared and it's something you grab and go really fast.
I guess normally on something like this, I'd be concerned about smells, you know, and not good or bad, but just odors on neighbors, but there's no immediate neighbors, plus they're doing the same thing in the park behind you, and he sits across
Yeah.
the street from you, so.
And we plan
Little
on,
bit different
when we do
situation
it,
here.
you know, only be open for like a dinner hour, or, you know, from like 11 to 1 or, you know, 4 to 6 or something like that. Maybe a little later than 6 or something, but not like it's going to be, we're going to operate for the whole day, just through lunch hours or supper hours.
Patrick, on the GIS that you pulled up there, they're just the one house. It doesn't show a house there now, right?
Correct.
That's a different property to the south of there.
Yes,
right?
that is the one that Dave spoke about that they still own.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yep, 1513 is the one that Southeastern Development Foundation still owns.
And I'm assuming if, you know, your business was wild and crazy and we were having some problems with parking and the police did come, you would work with us on that.
Oh yeah, no problem, no problem.
Other questions?
So I see the application that says I will provide at least 8 off-street parking spaces, so that's because you have space on
Yeah,
the lot.
there's
and
probably
you
at
have-
least 8 places to park.
And easy, enough room for people to turn
Yep.
around and not
Yep.
have a problem, that's, okay.
You can loop through. I mean, we know our neighbors and we've talked to them and they don't have an issue with that. You know, going in and out of either. They come out ours, we go out theirs. You know, because coming in there sometimes it's easier if you're coming from the south to go in that first one, which goes to their house, or other one. There is an easement there to use either way. So.
Is your house set back further than the neighbor house, or?
No, I think they're about the same. I think it's about the same.
So, where's the food truck gonna be parked? Is that gonna be
In our
parked
driveway.
In the driveway.
Yeah. Like
Um,
backed up to the garage because we have a side door serving.
I do have a concern with parking because it's only about 100-foot wide lot, and by the time you have a food truck and a couple of people, there may be spaces for 8 people to park, but I've seen people park without
I know.
very specific designations.
I know what you.
Get an inch of
Yeah,
snow
there
and
is
look at
the
Walmart.
picture of it.
capacity versus what actually happens is different. So people coming in aren't going to park. They just don't. So I'm concerned. I don't know if other members have that concern, but I do have a concern with the parking, and we're talking about a highway. It's not a side street.
Right.
That, you know, if you
Yeah,
start
that's understandable.
backing up onto the highway, that could be a bad situation pretty fast. And people looking at a food truck, and people are accelerating coming out of town, and
There is a. Okay, sorry. There is a U-shaped driveway there, so you can go in one side, go out the other. So it's not like you gotta back onto the highway to get out of there. The problem is there is a neighbor there that you have to kinda go onto that property to get out there or come in that way. And if that neighbor, I guess, doesn't have an issue with that, that wouldn't be an issue then. But it is a U-shape, so they have access coming in and going out more than one way, so.
Is that your understanding too, from having a hand in the property, that there's an easement so that there is a
Yeah.
defined right for
Yeah.
both properties to
Now,
utilize that?
someday the state's gonna come through this whole area and start eliminating some of these access things. Who knows when, but it's gonna happen someday, so. And they're gonna have to have shared driveways and all that good stuff, so. But right now, there is two access on them, both them properties, so.
do you have any idea on that easement if it says anything about business operation use? or
I'm
anything?
sure it doesn't say anything like that. It just says it's an access.
But we're not expecting 20 cars running in
No.
and out of there.
No.
Yeah. All right, other questions for this gentleman? If not, I'll entertain a motion one way or the other.
Home occupations we approve, or do we recommend?
It is a conditional use permit, so you would approve
Yeah.
without conditions, with conditions, or deny.
Mhm. Well, I will move to approve.
I'd bring second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the home occupation permit for 1509 South Split Rock. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Good luck to you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Dave, thanks for your comments. Okay, now we're gonna move into, what did we decide, the I-90?
So the overlay discussion was pushed up before the variance. Just so you're aware, Ron, hopefully you caught that.
Is he, oh, he's here for the is he there for the variance?
Yeah, you
Okay.
can hear me now.
So the broad discussion of an overlay district is now before the variance. So an overlay, yeah, if that's a potential solution to the issue.
Okay, so why don't you kind of give us an overview of the overview,
Yep.
or overlay?
So an overlay district is an added set of regulations that you can add on above an underlying zoning district. Think about it as kind of the second layer of a layer cake. You have your base layer, then you would add the regulations on top of that, and that would modify something specific for that district. If you were going to modify 10 to 20 things, that's probably a whole other district in itself, but if it's one or two items, maybe that's the way to go about it. With the overlay district, you could establish different or change rules or reduced rules or whatever you'd want for the underlying districts, and you would set the lots that would apply to that overlay. So, for an example, with Brandon 90 Plaza being general business, if on the map whatever we decide to do, if it's hash lines over it marking the overlay district, you could modify the underlying general business sign height or size or illumination or whatever you wanted to do. So there's a way to change the rules for certain lots by adding the overlay. What if it makes sense? If it doesn't, that's kind of what we're looking for in discussion.
We had kind of talked about trying to include that other building on Split Rock. This says that it has to be within 500 feet. Is that pretty set, or is that adjustable?
So the overlay district could be wherever you want it to overlay.
Okay, it just says on this interstate sign overlay district, and I didn't know if that was just an
Oh,
example.
so yes. So some have it where one of the added regulations, in addition to size and height, is two signs meeting certain requirement have to be 500 or 1,000 feet apart from each other. That's the way some communities address billboards.
I
To
was just-
keep them from being jumbled up.
I was looking at this interstate sign overlay district, and I think that's just an example of one, but it said within 500 feet of a federal. And the reason why I bring that up is because I saw that, and this other building's like 700 feet from there, so I wanted to see if that was just an example of one.
I think
or-
that's the example. Is it West Virginia somewhere?
Okay.
Is it Morgantown or Charleston? One of the two?
I was on page 56
So-
at the top.
Yeah, that's just an example.
Okay.
So Sioux Falls has, I'll call them billboard zones. Minnesota is one, 41st Street is one, 10th Street is one.
But are we talking about billboards here, or are we talking about store signs that are tall, or both?
Yep, it's whatever you would want to accommodate in the district. It could be purely you grant more size and height, but would that fall up to the billboard level? I don't know. If you want to add the distance thing, it's kind of however you want to do it. It's a toy in a sandbox. It's the fun part of zoning where you can kind of set the rules how you want them to be.
Did you figure out what the height is from that loop road up to the intersection?
I don't think we have gone out and measured it. I know it's pretty significant. Maybe Ron's group has. Have you measured the height from the base round up to where the interchange would be on the interstate?
Yeah, we have survey shots, around 32 feet of grade change. And I got some photos when our presentation comes up, but 30 feet or so.
That would just help give us some, determination of what the need might be, because if it's 30 feet, then come off the interstate, you have to look down to see the signs, so certainly makes for an argument.
I guess what's being requested by, I know there was a meeting, I don't know if it was last week. I know you've been visiting with developers, Chamber of what's everybody requesting?
So there was not a lot of consensus on whether there should be an overlay district or not. And Rob and Mike can correct me if I'm wrong there. We talked about several ideas. I don't think we ever reached really a solution on that. There was some interest from that group regarding finding a way to allow the existing billboards to not count against the properties that they're on. So that was the big feedback from that meeting, whether the brand 90 variance or overlay issue wasn't really resolved. So that's why it's kind of back to see what your appetite is. Do you see that as a problem? If yes, what can we do to solve it? There's a range of options, and overlay being one of them. Or if it's not an issue, then easy enough, problem solved.
But the variance that's coming in to us next is for this area, for the I-90 area.
Yes, and Ron and Marwin could speak to. They see it as being an issue. Whether you agree or not, is your policy decision, but they certainly do.
And at this point in time, the only way to make a change is through a variance, because we don't have an overlay district. Is that correct?
Correct. We would have to go through the process of adopting one to have it apply. The quick solution in the zoning code is, of course, the variance. Whether it meets the requirements or not, again, is up to you to determine. So this kind of focused more on Brandon 90, but if you all would be looking for taller and larger signs and wanted that to fall under the overlay district, you could certainly talk to them how far it extends south, if they choose to put one.
Because really, there's two issues. It's billboards on property, which is what you have, and then taller signs. No, that's what I'm saying. Yours issue, I believe, is a different issue compared to the I-90 Plaza area, I would say. There's really,
Would you be willing to step up to, just so we can have it on the recording?
One quick note, that grade change is 38 feet.
Name Trevor Kane, 1007 9th Avenue North, here in Brandon. So the problem that my property is presented with is because I have that billboard, it's basically saying that, if I understand this correctly, and I'm not very good at this, so that's taking up all my square footage for the signage, where if we build something, the renter / tenant would not be able to put their own sign up.
Yeah, and as Rob stated, I think that's a separate issue, and I'd like to deal with this I-90 issue first and the variance, but we'll get to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
If I were to consider an overlay district, I would want to have some kind of idea of where it would be. Like, so with talking about the I-90 Plaza, okay, I can understand that. How about some of those businesses that are west of Highway 11 on the
So-
other side?
The city administrator's suggestion was Brandon 90 Plaza, the hotels, possibly tailgaters, maybe extended down to north of Ash Street. Because I imagine McDonald's and Circle K, they would probably want something larger as well. So leave it mostly confined to the northern part there, was his suggestion. And for some reason, if another interchange appears to further to the east in 20, 25 years from now, then we'd look at extending it there. But currently, right now, that's kind of the focus area. The hotels, Brandon 90 Plaza, maybe tailgaters, maybe McDonald's.
And we could talk about bigger signs or taller signs, but the one request we have for us in the minutes tonight in the I-90 Plaza is only for a taller sign, not a bigger sign,
Correct.
right?
Where the bigger in size conversation comes from, the taller it goes.
Sometimes
I'm
the
guessing they
bigger-
probably don't want a Q-tip looking sign, because the
Well,
taller it goes,
yeah.
maybe the sign would be disproportionately small then if it's very tall. But it's all up to you, kind of what you are interested in doing, if you are.
Yeah, I think that, something along this lines up near I-90 would be something that we should, in my opinion, I think we should look at, because I think we're gonna have more requests. We have some existing signs there that are along these lines, and I think some of these we'll see a little bit more about this when we get the variance presentation, I think, but there are some, significant issues with that grading and the way that falls down on the east side, the drop in elevation situation there, so. And I think that's a good discussion and something good for us to look at is to find a way to make it specific to a certain area there close to I-90 and then I know we're gonna talk about this part, but then I think we do have a separate thing to talk about at some point, which is the billboards have been discussed, and I think Patrick had a suggestion or some of the material that he presented was, there's a place in our code that we could probably consider adding an exception that would say existing signs like this, because they do exist and they can potentially remain and not count against business signage. And I also like the talk about that it could also be said that they can remain conditional on one or more things. And if, for me, one of those would be and should be that, the existing lease for the billboard would be included, but provision that it wouldn't be renewed whenever that time comes. So I think there are two different discussions, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so Patrick, so getting back to the I-90, what do you need from us if they're interested in doing an overlay district? Just some direction
Yes.
before we get to the variance?
Would you be interested in just setting they can be up to X feet tall? Would you prefer some kind of formula where it's dependent on what the grade to the interchange is, then you add a plus number? So we'd have to go through a whole math formula. Are you interested in size and height, just height? So there's, so I'm just
Yeah.
looking for how you want this to look. So if you do an overlay, it would apply both, and where would you like it to apply? Do you want it to apply to the hotels as well? Where would you like the bounds to be? What do you think the numbers should be? Maybe numbers wise, I'm sure Marwin's probably more of an expert on that than I am, kind of what they need to be, or maybe Ron as well.
So just to keep this straight, we're not dealing with the variance at this point, correct?
Correct. This is just a discussion
Okay.
on possibly a future overlay.
Okay, so come up with those conditions, okay? All right, and if you state your name and
Yeah,
address.
Marwin Hofer, 204 West St. Andrews Drive in Sioux Falls. I'm Marwin Hofer, the owner of Brandon 90 Plaza, DWBP LLC. I'm glad we're having this discussion. The variance is a separate deal. This month, there's a variance from a tire store. Next month will be a variance from a C-store. Later on this year, there'll be a variance from a hotel. It's coming. It's coming. We set this partnership 4 years ago. It's taken some time. Infrastructure's in, retaining walls in, streets are in. We're ready to go, and it's going to happen. And that's the biggest issue, is the signage. With this partnership with the city of Brandon, we need end users. End users, to be successful, need visibility. To get visibility, you need signage. In the city of Brandon, for this partnership we have with them, it's the sales tax that we need. We need to draw people off the interstate. This is, years ago, I knew this was going to be a potential issue. Now it's coming to front. So I'm glad we're talking about this other overlay. It would make sense to do that. Discussions this last week with the hotel, that's came up, signage. What is there? What can we do? So timing of this is pretty good to have this overlay.
Just trying to keep it separated, thank you, Mark.
Right, yeah, well, I suspect that we'll get more and more requests as I-90 fills up. It's hard to come up with regulations when it doesn't exist yet. I mean, we can try, but we might have to, I don't like this word, tweak it, over time, modify it, yeah.
They wouldn't have happened
Adjust
to say
it.
what size or height sign they would be looking for. The hotels or C-store or anyone else potentially looking, they haven't said, we have to have this number.
I know the tire store is 50 feet. The tire store is 50 feet. I think the C-store may be a little higher than that. I don't know. I could get back to you on that, but
Where is this C-store that you're talking about?
There's 6 acres in the middle, what we call the ring road.
The
It's-
entire
it's-
middle?
It's the 3 acres to the west. Plans have been submitted to the city, have been approved.
And they're wanting higher than 50?
I'm not sure of that. I'm not sure of that.
My concern is we keep talking about this and that, are we talking the entire I-90 Plaza? Because we've already ran into a lot of disgruntled neighbors that live just south of that. They had issues with the traffic coming in there and some drainage and a lot of other things, and all of a sudden we start putting 50-plus feet signs right out their back bedroom window.
Lighted signs, maybe,
What's that?
lit up
Well,
signs.
of course they're gonna be lit
yeah,
up,
Lit up,
you know.
yeah.
So, are we, I don't know if we're talking the entire I-90 Plaza, but that, if I lived in that, in a house right behind there, I'd probably have some concerns with that.
You have more knowledge of signs than we do. Is there a way to have the light directional, like, so it doesn't go to the south, to the residential? Is there?
Yeah, and I was just gonna say too, if you look on the map, the signage we're talking about would be on the north side of the property. I don't envision anyone putting sign where the strip mall's at. There's no benefit there. You know, to shine a
It's-
light in the residential house, it'd be facing north. It'd be the north half of the development.
It's still only about 900 feet to the north property line there to the residential, so it's not that far, it's only 900 feet.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm not a sign expert, but if there's a way that it can, you know, make it so that the light doesn't shine south,
Sure.
That makes it-
And we're open to that. We wanna be team players here. We got end users we're trying to satisfy, and that's a big draw. As you come from, you know, from the traffic headed to the west, that's a huge visibility there for them and to pull off, and that benefits the development. And I want to be respectful too, obviously, to the residential people back there too, but it is zoned properly, and it's part of the development.
So, I guess I'm a little confused here. We're talking about the north, but yeah, I'm also hearing issues of signage facing east and west for the interstate traffic. So I guess I'm a little confused here.
The
Which
location-
direction
The
we're,
location of the signs would be on the north end of the property. I don't envision the C-store wanting to put the sign on the south end, it'd be more on the north end.
yeah, that,
Yeah.
I don't care where the sign sits. My concern is if I'm one of those people in one of those residential lots, is if I'm sitting in my living room in the back and all I see 24/7 is a sign,
Sure.
you know, because it's 50 feet in the air and all the buildings are 20 feet, it doesn't matter where on the property that sign is.
Sure.
Because it's gonna be way up there, it's gonna be way above all the buildings, so. But I'm hearing, not just today, but at other meetings, about wanting visibility to the east up the interstate, wanting visibility to the west up the interstate, and visibility from Split Rock, so. I'm hearing east, north, and west facing signs.
Yeah, it's gonna be a case by case, depending on the end user and where they're at on the development. Yeah, the map there, to answer your question about the location, the 6 acres in the middle there, what we call the Ring Road, or Martin Place, it'd be the 3 acres on the west side, would be the C-store, and the city of Brandon has those plans, they've been approved, but they're also looking for a sign variance, where they'd probably be on next month's agenda. So the timing of this overlay, it does make sense.
So what I hear you saying is that if the overlay is not available, we're gonna be faced with variances.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
it's one,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yep.
okay,
Yeah, and theirs could be 14.
okay. So it takes a
Over
while.
14 over time.
Yeah,
over
it
time.
takes a while to get these things through, so if the commission is willing to give a variance at the beginning, we could eventually get to an overlay. Is that what we're talking about? Like, we're not in the variance hearing now, I know, but I'm just planting that seed, okay?
There could end up being 14 really tall signs in that corner.
It was 14 lots, that's why I said that, so, yeah, yeah. And actually, the tire store, they're buying 2 lots, so that's not correct. 14 is not the right statement. Okay, all right. Over time, yeah. And if you're an end user, in this
What?
case, yeah, 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 yeah.
I thought yeah.
If you're a tire store, a national tire store making an investment in Brandon, you want to have visibility and that signage, that's all part of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that. You know more about signs because I was down in Mesa over Christmas and there are no tall signs in that whole town. So somehow they still make money.
Sure.
But, so I don't understand it, but.
Okay, so Patrick, do you have what you need thank you so much, at the moment, so we can move into the variance?
Just clarification for the group, are you interested in pursuing the overlay concept?
I think so. One question, we had talked about doing the I-90, but we also talked about going west for the hotels. I guess the biggest difference I see there is the elevation. For I-90, if it's 38 feet up to the road, that the hotels don't have that issue. So if we gave a blanket footage, and said you were allowed whatever, those hotel signs are going to be about 30, 40 feet taller than the I-90 Plaza actual height. So I guess I'm not sure about going west, but we can discuss that or put in, like I said, put in a calculation. But if I-90 is 38 feet lower, those hotel signs are going to be pretty high. So I guess that'd be my concern going west.
I guess, if we're gonna do an overlay, let's be a little bit more forward-reaching than just the I-90 Plaza. I guess when I kept hearing the word I-90, I thought we were talking about the entire stretch of I-90, including the north side of the interstate on the Corson side. That's gonna develop eventually, and it would include the west side of Split Rock, which is the industrial park and the hotel and tailgaters and whatever else might happen down there. So, to me, if we're going to do something and it's because of its relationship to the interstate, then let's address it now, so we don't have to talk about it when the next development comes in. And to me, if we're going to do an interstate overlay district for signage, let's just encompass X number of feet from the right of way. Is it 200 feet off the right of way, 400 feet off the right of way? 1,000, what's an appropriate number?
Because we don't want Patrick to have to go to a bunch of work and then we say, oh no, we didn't want that.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, okay.
5 years later, when somebody develops the other side of the interchange,
Is that,
we're back at the drawing board.
is that agreeable to everyone?
That's what I was thinking too, was that kind
Okay.
of approach, yes.
Okay. Okay, I think we've got that. You good, Patrick?
Yep, we will, as far as numbers go, in terms of size and height and all that, we will try to have some internal discussions and come back with some numbers and why those numbers are what they are. And hopefully we can get you something back
I guess
on the 20th, I think is the next
I'm okay
meeting.
with a little bit higher sign. I'm a little cautious about larger signs, unless we start talking about very large parcels, like a Flying J truck stop or something, where, it would take up almost the entire I-90 Plaza. So to me, I'm okay if we want to have some higher signs. I don't know if we necessarily need to go larger. I looked at Sioux Falls, I looked at I looked at Harrisburg, I looked at Hartford, I looked at Laverne, and they all max out the same size we max out at. So, I don't think any other municipality has any leg up on us, and I don't think we're behind. If anything, we're more lenient than a lot of those, what I would call competing municipalities. So,
I was driving by Fleet Farm in Sioux Falls, and they have their big signs up on huge mounds. And one thing I'd say is, let's make sure that we're doing this in a way that people aren't finding workarounds. We're doing it the right way instead of having 30-foot mounds and then 30-foot signs on top of that, because they still accomplished what they wanted. It just doesn't look good. So.
Okay, good to go at that? All right,
so.
so now we need to adjourn, correct?
Correct, you have to reform as the Board of Adjustment.
So I need a motion to adjourn planning and zoning.
So moved.
Motion and second to adjourn planning and zoning. All in favor? Opposed? All right, and then we have to call to order Board of Adjustment.
Yes.
And do we have to have a motion for that?
I don't know,
I don't know.
you're probably fine.
Okay.
Everyone's still here, so
All
we
right.
probably don't need to do roll call either, no one
Okay.
left.
All right. Approval of the agenda for Board of Adjustment. We just have one variance.
There's no motion to approve.
Tote second.
Motion second to approve the agenda for Board of Adjustment. All in favor? Opposed? All right. Thank you for your patience on the Zoom call. We appreciate it. So let's go ahead and move into the variance.
So this is a variance for 1324 East Martin Place. That is the future lot being looked at by Les Schwab Tire Centers. It is to the east of the existing Heartland Appliance. It's the longer lot just south of Interstate 90. So they are looking for a sign variance to take the maximum height from 30 feet in general business to 50 feet. And we have both a representative of Les Schwab as well as the owner of Brandon 90 Plaza here, if you have any questions or want to talk through it with them.
I don't remember, there's a lot of pages in our packet here today. I don't remember seeing a site plan that specifically showed is it the one on page 34?
To the first page, the exhibit package.
Is the sign in question the one in the northwest corner?
Correct.
And is that the only sign, the only freestanding sign?
We also have a monument sign down by the street.
And how large is that?
That one, that's within the allowable code, monument sign.
But is that, I guess I'm just concerned about the total square footage on a parcel. I think what we're talking about earlier for the additional height, but now if we're talking multiple signs, that creates a separate issue. Then it becomes two variance issues, not just one.
So the standard in the code for general business lots is cumulative total area per lot not to exceed 1 square foot per 1 foot of lineal street frontage with a total of 200 square feet. Each lot shall be limited to 1 per street frontage, except businesses on frontages of 200 or more may erect 2 freestanding signs. They shall not be taller than 30 feet above grade in the GB district.
But still, 200-foot max cumulative, right?
Correct.
And the monument sign counts in that square footage?
Correct. The differentiating thing is if it's attached to the building, it's a wall sign and that's its own 200 square feet. If it's not, attached to the building. It's a freestanding sign, and that has a 200 square foot cap as well.
Would you, on this, if we just discuss the 50-foot sign for a minute here, are you able to either eliminate or greatly reduce the light that would be shining south?
Yeah, we'd be open to the condition, that's something I'll land, a condition that, just clarification from your end, that just the pylon sign to be allowed, at 50 foot tall. And we're not asking for a larger sign panel, just, we're just requesting a taller head.
Maybe I'm just not seeing it here, but how, I know that you're saying that the variance is addressing sign height, but does it say in here how big you propose the pylon sign to be, the signage part of it?
In our package, I think we provided some pole sign details. I could share my screen if you'd like, or Patrick can pull it up.
Page 40 on our packet.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. So 127, so if in fact the monument sign proposed is less than the difference between that and 200, then it would fit under the 72 and a half.
And top of my head, I don't remember the specs of that monument sign, the prototype.
If we did an overlay district, how long would it take?
A change to the code at best takes 60 to 90 days, just because there are state law timing requirements and public hearing notice requirements, all that stuff. If it magically lines up right, the draft presented on the 20th is exactly spot on, then public hearing with planning and zoning would be likely April 17th, then city council reading on the 21st, then the 5th. So you'd be looking at end of May, early June, probably, if everything went swimmingly. But so you're potentially a little bit longer. You might conservatively looking at June or July, probably.
And so if the client could wait that long, we wouldn't have to consider a variance request, or
That is
said
up to the seller and the buyer.
that would be, yeah, and didn't you already say we'll have this variance request tonight and another one next month and another one the month after that maybe? Well, and that's 2-3 of them before we could even get an overlay thing up and going. Yeah, come on up. If you, just wondering about, all the timing of it and what might be most efficient.
Well, Marwin Hofer, 204 West St. Andrews in Sioux Falls. Ron is a civil engineer and hired to work for the end user, Les Schwab. This, the attorneys put this deal together. It's been years. They have a scheduled closing April 2nd, less than a month away. Due diligence, all contingencies have been waived. Due diligence has been done. This is the last issue of the signage to push it back. Do what you need to do, but that would really be an inconvenience for us and the work that's been done over the years. And full disclosure, the C-store is a month behind there in terms of closing.
just to note, a sign permit is separate than a building permit. So even if they didn't have the sign permit right away, they could still get a building permit and start construction.
I mean, even if we're all in agreement with the variance for allowing additional height there, we're gonna be able to find hardship. Based on our required process, we have to find hardship in order to grant the variance. That's what I've been told in the past.
Correct, you still have to fill out the form, and there are still requirements of the zoning code to follow.
I think the hardship would be the lay of the land. And I know that in past situations, we have not gone with that, but, in this particular case, it's pretty dramatic. I don't know what else we would have for hardship.
I think
Can I
that,
say one thing? One thing, there's also tall power poles out there. We have elevation, survey elevations to the bottom wire, and that's about 80 feet, 85 feet off the ground. So to give you some perspective, as well as the exhibits have provided, those power poles really hover the north edge of that property. And, those residential homes, I'm sure they see you.
I think for this one being the furthest from the residential, depends on what we do with the overlay, if we wanna have some, as you get closer to residential, like we do with tall buildings, the closer you get to residential, the less forgiving we are, I guess, but, this one's further away. I think the hardship, it being, 38 feet below the road, you'd be looking down from the road to see the sign. I think that is an argument for a hardship. If you went with our 30-foot height, so I think there's an argument there with the lay of the land. And if we can put in, you sound like you'd be able to do something with the light shining to the south. If we put in a condition for limiting the light from the sign to the south.
Oh, the sign, lighting from the sign. Yeah, that looks like that sign is usually gonna be placed so it's for those east and westbound drivers, so I think the light's gonna go east and west.
So just for the board, so the hardship you need to find is that there is something about the lot, whether it's exceptionally irregular, narrow, shallow, steep, or other exceptional physical conditions whereby the strict application would result in an unnecessary hardship that would deprive an owner of the reasonable use of the land. So then you go back on the next page, that what is an unnecessary hardship? So it says refers solely to the particular physical condition of the property, not any physical or self-inflicted hardship of its owner, financial or otherwise, must be of substantial and compelling force, not for convenience and profit. And to note 5 on page, I guess, 132, no non-conforming use or structure in the same district and no permitted or non-conditional or non-conforming use or structure in other districts are the sole grounds for granting a variance. So the standard that you all have to find is that, as Brian mentioned, an unnecessary hardship exists related to the property.
I know we're supposed to consider these on a case-by-case basis. But if we could get another variance request next week from another person going into the I-90 Plaza, and they aren't 30 feet down, 30, whatever, you know, but they'll say, you gave a variance last month, and so we have to, gee, I'd just rather consider them all collectively, but I don't know how you, other people on the board here.
Where do you draw the line on a hardship? Well, hey, I'm 200 feet away from Split Rock. I need to get my sign higher so that it can be seen from Split Rock. Or I'm 1,000 feet from the interstate. How do I get my sign visible to the interstate? I mean, where do you draw the line on a hardship of being able to see a sign? It's kind of vague.
I agree to a degree. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. I thought you were done. I agree with Alyssa to a degree that in a perfect world we'd consider this holistically, and sounds like we are going to go down that path. But we have this variance in front of us tonight, and some of our discussion here and the outcome of it may very well inform that discussion that we're going to have and play into that. But and when we have had these variances in the past for other things, we try to be very specific in how that's formed, so it states something about the unique hardship or condition of the property or whatever it is that makes that up, so that there's some documentation of that unique situation, so that if we had another situation, we'd have to consider that separately, and maybe it would have a similar unique situation, and maybe it wouldn't, but I think we can potentially state that. And
Your other option, of course, you can choose to make a decision today if you would prefer to defer whether the applicant can provide additional information demonstrating their hardship. If you would prefer to defer until you are a full board, it does require 2/3 of you to vote in the affirmative. So, correct. So the full board counts as 6 of you. Being absent doesn't reduce that number. So by default, then, if you're not here, you can't vote in the affirmative. So it's the effect of a no vote.
I guess one concern I would have when we're doing this, if we do decide that there's a hardship here in a variance, and we say that it's because of the grade, that doesn't address my earlier concerns with the proximity to residential on the south side of the plaza. So, is there a way, you know, I know we're only talking about this, but I guess what I'm saying is, if we say that they can have a 50-foot sign here, and someone else comes in on the south, one of those south lots that border residential, they're gonna make the same argument. So how can we say that, how do we address that? How do we say that they have a good enough hardship on the north side, and because of their location, it doesn't have as much effect on residential, where on the south side, I'm not sure that I want a 50-foot sign that borders residential properties. Is there a way to address that? Or does anyone else share my concerns with that?
I guess that's where my comment about, like, I'm having a hard time with the hardship.
As far as lights, like I live, there's a street light at the corner of my property, shines right in the bedroom window. Doesn't bother me. So.
Past question, are you needing further, like photometrics lighting study of the sign? That can show, it's like the candle, like the illumination numbers.
I think right now we're just trying to deal with the hardship issue.
Okay.
of what hardship does this particular lot have that's unique to it and not other lots in the area or the community? Excuse me.
The hardship the applicant presented is on page 33. If you don't have it in front of you, you might want to look there.
And the problem with the hardship is, what we're saying is a hardship, why wouldn't that hardship apply to the other 13 lots? And then we have, so we're trying to think of all those other lots, because your sign may not be as much of an issue, but we don't know what the other ones are gonna be. So, I know you're thinking about your sign, but we're kind of thinking about the whole thing and what kind of can of worms we open up. That's the problem with the variance, I guess.
But if we would establish an overlay district, couldn't we address it in that? On the south side?
Yeah, I think you could address all of those issues. You could say you have to, you can say whatever. I don't know how you do all the things, but how do you? I don't know sign lingo, so I don't know how you say it can only have so much light shining in a certain direction. I mean, if you have half a dozen signs, 50 foot tall, over residential, that's a lot. And I guess that's my concern. On the north side, it's a concern, but it's not as much.
But let's say that let's say we do the variance, approve the variance, and then we get the overlay district in place. Would that, make it so that if we limited the south side lighting as an example, would that limit their ability to file a variance for that side? Because what you're saying, Brian, is you're concerned about other ones will want the same thing, correct?
Well, anytime we issue a variance, we have to give that same latitude to anybody else that walks in the door.
But if we have an overlay district already in
Then
place,
we wouldn't have to issue a variance. Because we
but
would
I'm
address
thinking
it.
farther down the road.
Right.
I mean, could we control it that way, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm
Control
just-
the variance that way, down the road.
We've probably also had situations where, yes, we've had a variance request and it's been approved, and then later we've addressed it in some way, and that kind of, if it matches up with what's done in the code later, it sort of wipes the slate clean, if the variance falls within that, I guess if the variance would exceed something we'd do later, then that would still be what would you call it, that would still be an outlier or something that still exists outside of our code. So if it falls within something that we later would put in an overlay district or something else, then it kind of wipes the slate clean, so to speak, at that point.
So I guess, I don't know the schedule here. I mean, obviously, we're trying to get this overlay thing taken care of. Yeah, it's gonna take a little while. But, I'm not sure what the time frame is for construction. I'm guessing it's probably gonna be late this fall before this building is done and ready for occupancy, and it shouldn't take too long to erect a sign. I mean, does that time frame work with the applicant?
I'd like to get back with the team, get more data for you to see if that's something they can work with. I guess, if we're headed down that road, I'd love to have an opportunity to bring back more information and get together with Marwa as well, and maybe, hate saying this, but, tabling and going from there.
I'm not sure it's a matter of maybe being against a sign like that, but it's just more of a matter of what's the best way to approach it in our city regulations. Is that kind of how you see it too? Yeah, I mean, that's how, a little bit of how I'm thinking about it.
I'm just concerned if we give a variance here because they're a certain distance below a certain road, that gives anybody else down the road, I shouldn't have said, in the future, to come in and say, well, you gave this business a variance because they were 30 feet below. Well, I want a variance because I'm 20 feet below grade, or, you know what I mean? They can use that same criteria. I mean, I think we're all pretty much okay with this. I mean, we want to move forward with an overlay district that allows a greater height. But do we want to approve a variance that now starts to set precedents everywhere else in town?
I guess I don't see that we have many places in town that are gonna be 20 or 30 feet down below. I mean, I just think that that's a pretty unique situation. And I struggle with, it's probably gonna happen anyway, so I struggle with holding up the timeline on this because I struggle with that.
And I certainly understand that. My concern is in the next 3 months while we're working on that, what if one of the properties on the south side comes in, and if in the overlay and this is kind of where I'm thinking right now, I'm not saying that would be my final decision, but if we're thinking along the south side where abuts or is adjacent to, I'm not sure what the term is, but residential property, do we want a 50-foot sign on those properties? So
Sometimes I think I'd want it taller as a resident, because 30 foot's gonna be right in my window.
maybe.
Just talking,
Yeah.
kind of.
But yeah, I don't know, but those are things that we can discuss when we're discussing the overlay and being more comprehensive instead of, that's my concern with doing the variance, is that we don't get to really have a full plan and what happens in the interim if we approve this variance. That's
To piggyback off of that, timeframes, Patrick, 90 days, 120 days, whatever it takes you to go the overlay. Obviously, we have variance tonight, and then the C-store. If it's 90 days, 120 days, there'll be nothing else that will come to you for variance for signage. I'm comfortable saying that. So it gives you sufficient time to do the overlay before you get bombarded with these other requests for sign, but there'll be one more from a C-store. And everything else, we'll just wait until you get the overlay, sufficient time to get that done. So that, you don't worry about any other requests coming. It won't happen for, we'll say through 90 days, 120 days. It takes time to put these deals together in the hotels.
Yeah, thank you.
Ron, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, and hardship, there is the Excel Energy easement, and that really, affects placement, but, that's just something to consider as well. And then recently, I think, had to take more area, if I remember right.
Is that why you put the sign on the west side instead of the east side, closer to the interstate?
Right, yeah.
Patrick, where does the hardship come from? Is that our ordinance? Is that a state law? I don't think in the times that I've been on the other side of the podium, I've never had to express hardship. Is
So-
this a city of Brandon thing?
State law, I believe, uses the term hardship. We have defined what we consider a hardship. So I think state law broadly uses the term, and of course leaves it up to communities to decide how would they assign the definition to that hardship.
I think if I remember correctly, I think what happened is we used to have these meetings, and then city council would come in and overrule planning and zoning. And so we tightened up the hardship so that it was more difficult to get a variance, and then we felt that city council would back the Board of Adjustment. That's what I recall from way back when. So it's us, yeah. It's pretty tight.
But I know a lot of times applicants are coming in and they're bringing all these Google Earth images of, well, it's allowed here, and also in Brandon. And so that gives us, you know what I mean? We don't have a leg to stand on if somebody, my neighbor down the street's got this situation, so. And it's happened multiple times.
Well, that's always the challenge, but, things change too. I don't know. I think, do we have some comments down? Rob, anything? Alyssa, anything? Brooks? We need a motion one way or the other, and then there's a vote. But if there's more discussion.
Yeah, for sake of discussion, so if we had a motion here, I was just trying to think of any potential conditions, just to go to a different part of the discussion for a minute. The variance request is specifically for height of sign. I was trying to think of if there was anything in a condition that we could state that would address a sign shining on or toward the residential area. I don't know how to state that, or if it would be enforceable, but any thoughts on that?
Well, and this one in particular, I think it's not like a really obnoxious sign, so I don't know, and it does shine east and west. I just think that's something we need to be cognizant of is it's not this property, the development, but it's to residential. So when you're talking about expanding signs, I think this is where we would want to be cautious. I don't know that this sign in particular would be an issue, but in this development, I think that's something we need to think of.
Does staff have any comments?
Other than laying out the process, you have to find a unnecessary hardship. It takes 2/3 of a vote of the members. You have the options. You can issue the variance without conditions, issue the variance with, or you can table, you can, of course, say no. So you do have at least 4 options.
But if we say no, then it's another 6 months before it can come back.
It could be appealed to the city council if the applicant chooses to do so. But otherwise, yes. Conceptually, you say no and the city council says no, then a variance of substantially the same subject matter on that property would not be allowed for 6 months.
However, if we established an overlay district before that would allow it, then they wouldn't need a variance. So that could happen. You want to start to build right away this spring, very soon, right? I'm guessing? You plan to start, you'd like to start building when?
Oh, see, the project's going to building permit about a month and a half, so I think it's about May or June start. Get all the permits in place, the contractor selected.
And then it would be ready for customers to walk in about when?
That's about a 200-day build, so this is a first quarter 2026. First quarter of 2026.
And we could easily get an overlay district prepared before then. And if the applicant here is if we're all pretty confident that it will be allowed, we just don't know how we're gonna go about it yet, then.
There's a lot that goes into an ordinance process. conceptually, it could be referred to a public vote. So there's a lot that goes into a process. Is that likely to happen? Relatively unlikely, but there's a lot that goes into that process that is not guaranteed.
I guess I'm for this. However, ethically, I can't agree to C and D on our form. My hands are tied by the form that we have to follow. I'm for this, but if we have to follow the form, I can't ethically say yes on C and D. I mean, can a business not operate there? I mean, based on how it's worded, that they can't operate there on that property.
Just for Ron, he's referring to C and D on page 30 of the packet.
And this has been the issue on several variances and that's why I asked, is this something that we as the city have self-imposed, or is this state law that we're required to follow?
I think Lisa wrote it, it's self-imposed.
I guess, let me ask the applicant this, have you purchased you're planning on closing on the land, right? They have not purchased the land, right? Yes, so, let me ask you a question. Does this sign hold up this deal?
Very much so.
So,
Les Schwab could walk tomorrow if they don't get a sign variance.
so that, to me, is when the last sentence there, must render the ability to use the land unfeasible without the variance. If it affects the purchase of the property, commercial property, that affects the feasibility of the property. So, I think it does affect the feasibility. If you can't meet highest and best use of a property without it, it affects it. And if highest and best use is commercial property, and it's gonna ruin the deal, I think that's an argument. So I guess I would say on C, I would say, just because of the practical use of signage and not being able to reach typical visibility because of the land, that would make the land unfeasible, the use of the land unfeasible without the variance. And on D, D says the literal interpretation of the zoning provisions deprive the applicant of the following rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district. I would say that visibility of signs is paramount, and with our current ordinance, the signs would be below the access street, so it would be depriving the applicant of visibility, which is the reason for signs. So I would say that it does affect that.
Would you say that deprives the ability of a sign that in our ordinance from being visible on both sides of the interchange?
Well,
Because it's in fact below.
Especially
what the
from the west.
grade of
Not,
the-
it wouldn't necessarily from the east, but definitely from the west. So,
Yeah. So it's visible from one way, but it would not be from the other. It would actually be below the level of the road there, the interchange at the top.
Are you making a motion to that?
we're getting there, I think.
Yeah, this is Brooks, no, I'll make a motion to recommend, to approve the variance stating the hardship as, and this is along those lines, that the the highway overpass here would actually render a sign that fits our ordinance unviewable from the other side of the highway. And as was just stated, that the it would deprive the business there of the common benefit of having a sign that's viewable from both sides of that interchange that off of the I-90.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Toad second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. This might be 1-4 roll call, please.
Can I just say one thing? Yeah, that, developers everywhere maybe didn't look at the ordinances and plan some of these applications a little earlier in the process.
Brian? Brooks?
Aye.